Welcome.
Welcome, Lori. Yay.
I'm Dan Williams, with the Transit Committee.
I'm Harvey, a veteran, and I'm just happy to be here today.
I'm Kim Roney, former member of the Multimodal Transportation Commission.
Kyle Sherrod, new member of the Transit Committee and Assistant District Attorney, just next door at the county courthouse.
I'm Elizabeth Medlock. I am still the interim chair of the Transit Committee and on the Multimodal Transportation Commission.
Thomas Loudwick, Transit Committee, and I work at Fiscal Legal.
Paul Grosbeck. I'm sort of a volunteer fiscal legal. Otherwise, I just hang out.
I'm Jeff Jones, member of the Asheville Transit Committee. I'm a Unitarian Universalist community minister as well.
My name is John Hom, I'm a member of the Asheville Transit Committee. I'm also a veteran, and I work for the service station.
I'm Eunice Wilby, and I'm with the City Transportation Department.
Marcel Moreno, also with the City Transportation Department.
Okay. We have guests during public comment. Y'all can come up and introduce yourselves if you have during the public comment. Welcome everyone. Welcome to our 3U members. The first thing we have on the agenda today is looking at our agenda, our approval of our agenda items. So take a minute to peruse that, and we need to go ahead and approve our agenda.
Actually, I had a question about that.
Yep.
Whether that's appropriate. I thought I requested to have an update about when fare-free trials would happen.
Yeah, so I
recommended in TMP, but I didn't
Yeah.
know if that got cut.
took it off.
Okay.
And here's why, because I thought it might come up, and because we had so many other things on our agenda, and fair free is still kind of a moving thing, that I said we can put it back on February, and if it comes up in discussion, we're ready to talk about it. If not, I promise you, it'll be on there. It was kind of sequencing and staging, in terms of where it got put.
Yeah, maybe if there's just time in the staff update. I just don't know if there's been, y'all have gotten to that yet.
They have,
So
yeah.
even if it's a brief update, I'd be grateful.
Sure.
So I'm hearing that it could have been a request of the staff update. I'm just asking to get ready for motion. Okay, motion to approve.
Second.
Second? Good. Any discussion? Okay. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we have our agenda for today. Okay, the next item that we have in front of us is our minutes from our December 17th meeting that you got in advance. Hopefully everyone had time to look over these minutes. Does anyone have any comments, discussion, changes to those minutes? One thing I wanted to ask, and I didn't have time to go back. At one point, and if not, maybe we need to do this today, we made a recommendation to fully fund, year 2 of the transit master plan as recommended. In that, did we vote to, at some point, say that extended service hours for implementation of fiscal year 1 be done in this fiscal year? I didn't see it in the minutes from December, but I have this recollection that we voted that way at some point. And if not, I want to, okay, I want it to come up here. Yeah, I know, I was thinking that too.
I can go back and review that. It would be
Yeah.
sometime.
No, and I reviewed it and I couldn't find it, but I didn't know if anyone else had that recollection of the one meeting that we voted for like full funding of. Okay. So maybe at some point today we want to,
Here it is.
yes,
Motion to endorse enhancement budget for fiscal year 1 and, transit master plan fiscal year 2 as named with staff. Jeff seconds that.
right. But we didn't make a recommendation that year 1 be, funded in this fiscal year if possible. I didn't. Okay, I just wanna like hold that out there because there's gonna be a big movement towards that tonight, and maybe that's something we need to do today, so I just wanna, that's why I wanted to put it out. Yeah, because I didn't see it, and I think we missed it, I think our intent was there, but I'm not sure if it got captured formally in that way.
Should we go back and add, put it on the agenda?
Yeah,
seems like-
and I was thinking it would probably would actually come out during the budget discussion, I'm just noting it, I noted it for myself to like make it, like, let's push it forward during the budget discussion and do that, if that sounds okay with the rest of the members. Okay. Any other discussion about the minutes? Sorry, I just wanted to get that out. Wait, did I miss public notes next, right? Yeah,
So we just need a motion to the minutes.
Move to
Yeah.
approve.
sorry.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? And all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, good. Okay, so we already had the explanation of public comment, and now we'll have public comment because we already have a welcoming statement. So we have lots of folks behind us today.
Stand up there.
I don't know, I guess, but yeah, or stand up there, can everybody see? Yeah.
First, my name's Matthew Supley, I'm just nobody. But, I wanna thank all the beautiful people, Liz, Kim, Marcella, all the beautiful people, and Jeff, that were out there passing out information for these changes. Got a few of my Hispanic people that I knew, they're a little upset because I told them the schedules were gonna be printed in Spanish also, and only the part about the fairs was printed in Spanish also. Not all of them have access to the internet, so I'm sure they're getting it figured out, and some of them don't wanna talk to me anymore because I told them a lie. It's not my fault. I know there's still, and I know the bugs and everything have to be worked out. Still a lot of confusion about these changes. I've heard a lot, and I feel the same also. Top of the hour, bottom of the hour would have been better. I know the routes had it. I know there was a couple like the E2 and whatnot that left a quarter after the hour, which was fine. But, been a few times where I've missed my connections, drivers can't help traffic, missed my connection by 15 seconds, pull in just to watch it pull out. There was a couple times where I rode the WE1 and, I don't understand the length of layover out there by Walgreens sometimes, but some drivers think it's mandatory, even if they're running behind, they have to wait 10 minutes. They don't understand 12 after the hour is time to check out there. So, because of that, I've misconnected with the S3 twice. I live up north Louisiana, not far from Patton, so I've got a choice. W5 is my plus normally, but I can catch the WE1, WE2. And I have to say, it's convenient to go from the west side to the east side without stopping and changing, because that takes a lot of the problem out of if the bus is running late, having to worry about connecting with it because they're already on. So that part is good. Like I said, it's as confusing for riders as I know it is for some of the drivers so far, but it's gonna take time. I have to say that for the most part, I see positives happening. Thank you, and y'all have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to have the floor for public comment?
Yeah, well, as a matter of fact, I came in on the WE1 and, it got out here to the courthouse at 5 till 3. So that's why I walked in at the time I did. But I wanted to comment on the fact that I go to the Unitarian Church on Charlotte Street. And on Wednesday night, we have, different things going on, and I can't be a part of that because of the time the buses shut down. That we really need later buses. And, you know, that it's not, serving its function in terms of, you know, when I was taking my degree in hospitality and tourism, we were taught that, you know, that everything in the city is basically a function of supporting the hospitality industry. And that, the transit system isn't 3 or 4 till 10 or 11, and they need a way to get home. And I don't know how many times when I was living in Swananoa, I would talk to somebody and saying, well, I got a good job right now, but I won't have in a week or two because I can't get home from work. I can get to work, but I can't get home from work. And you're taking care of that with the 170. Except that it needs to go later than it does now.
Can you say your name for the record so that we can record?
I'm James Solano.
James, thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Would anyone else like to comment? Hi. Hi. Okay. Onward and upward, the first thing that we're gonna be talking about is election of, new folks, and the two positions up for election is I've been interim chair for 5 months. And so I guess you technically have to elect me, as chair if you want to, of this committee. And secondly, we have a secretary position open because Kim will be revolving off at some point in time that, is not, is in the near term and not in the far term. So we need to go ahead and have someone else, be, the secretary. Taking notes, which will be in your own style. Again, with the secretary, we're just recording, kind of, synopsis of major discussion, key decision points, votes taken and action taken. The style that you take the notes, is up to you. You can take notes like Kim does in the meeting, you can record it and take notes after, however you want. So there's a little bit of flexibility, in how you get those notes down. I just wanna put that out there, kind of put your own stamp on it. So, I guess
So
we'll,
at the,
yeah, go ahead.
everybody's new to the table.
Yeah.
And, loves typing, like, I'm happy to show you the ropes. Because at the minimum, we just need the motion and the
Yeah.
second and how the vote went down and any major points, but maybe
Yeah.
it's very doable. Or if you wanna write it down, and type it in.
And you, Thomas, you typed during the meeting also in the
Yeah.
secretary, okay. But again,
I think our notes are much more comprehensive than others.
I agree. It's just awesome. Do we have any, body that would be willing to put themselves forward that would like to do the role of secretary? I know I did approach the new members by email saying this was gonna happen, but, would anyone like to take on that role?
What do you use to record that?
The phone.
Your phone, just your phone?
There's an app.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's doable too, is to record and then do the notes later, which is what, you know, I would do in my situation. And maybe we would rotate it every 6 months, we talked about that before, so, cause I know that's it kind of disengages you a little bit from the action. So, that's a possibility too, that we would have that as a rotating every 6 months, so if you're committing that we would say like, we'll have somebody else do it, maybe do a 6-month rotation. If anybody's willing to do it for a 6-month period.
I'll do it.
Yes.
I'll do it. I just have to consider responsibility here.
Yeah.
I'd like to move, that Beth be, president of the transit committee and Dana be, secretary. Second.
Just for point of order,
But
two
you're
separate
separately.
motions, so Jeff makes the motion for Beth as
Can I just,
secretary.
I need to disclose something to you guys before you vote me. I am leaving Asheville, so, in September. So, I would like to stay the chair. I think I have work to do as the chair. So you have me until August or September, but then I will be leaving Asheville. So I just wanna put that out there.
I move that Beth is chair of the transit committee.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, we have a discussion. I just wanted to let y'all know that. All in favor?
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Oh, that's exciting. Great, that's awesome.
And that means that Thomas will stay on as the vice.
Yes, Thomas is vice chair because we voted him in, so we now have all our roles filled. Okay, good. The next thing on our agenda is to have an update of the route changes that went into effect on January 5th. I wanna say, before we do that, thank you, and thank you to all the folks, to staff, to folks on this committee, to folks in the community for standing out there in the cold and in the wind and when things were flying all over, for that period of time to help make that transition, easier. I appreciate, and I think the riders appreciated our presence there during that transition, so I just wanna say thank you before, and acknowledge that before we got started talking about it. Okay.
There were a couple of hiccups. I know that the first day or the weekend, frantically contacting the head sign company to get things to work out. I think for the most part, all of the really bumpy bits have been smooth. Definitely have also heard feedback on some confusion about the times. Now the routes aren't leaving directly, like top of the hour, bottom of the hour. But I know I've been looking at Swiftly, and generally we're on the up and up, which is very exciting.
Right on time performance?
Yes.
Yes. Awesome.
It's great.
Yeah, before noon, 1 o'clock each day, we're north of 70% OTP.
More to 70?
I have a question about that.
Before noon to 1.
Okay.
And then some of the Swiftly data captures pulling into ending terminals as early, which you can do as long as you don't leave the ending terminal early. So there's about 6 points in that alone. We have between 4 and 6 points in that alone. So that puts us closer to, well, we definitely, with the afternoon, because of the traffic and the delays that you incur there, it really knocks the number down between, I think we were 68 yesterday, 66 yesterday, all day. But before 1, it's like 71, 72. So when you throw in another percentage that really aren't earlies, we're north of 70. So it achieved a lot of the goals. I think most importantly though is the late is down 7
Usually around
to 10% compared to what it was doing 2 or 3 weeks ago. So it's running more consistently on time. And the drivers feel as though there's the ability to run the route. And some of those inner lines that we do have, one route may be a little tighter, but then the next one is a little looser. So they're able to catch up the time. They're not constantly running behind for a 4-hour shift in the afternoon. They're able to pick it up. So mostly positive stuff. Yeah, there's some things that need to be, over time taken care of, but mostly a positive on the operations side as far as on-time performance and the ability for drivers to do the job without a extreme stress trying to keep a schedule that just doesn't work.
I have a question about that, cause I know I'm with Matthew and the other riders I've heard that like, there's gonna be change. Change is always a challenge cause you have to adapt. If anything, I've realized that I had to adapt to being really used to my routes running so late, that now it's like inconvenient that they're on time.
Yeah, absolutely.
That
Yeah.
said, I'm wondering how much, like when I just look at like, just like the math of it, if a route had 15 time points on it before, and now has 5, there's 10 less opportunities for it to be early or late. It doesn't mean that it's not like getting to those points, but what other like benchmarks do we see where removing time points increases on-time performance? Does that make sense?
Well, I'm not so sure removing time points increases on time performance. Removing time points allows a route to run free where it can run free. If you restrict the route with 10 time points or where you restricting the operator's ability to run free through that run. And you don't wanna do that, you want it to run free through a run, so it runs efficiently. And you don't have passengers sitting there at a light or at a stop waiting for time to kill so we can run on time now. So we still got some of those bumps and hurdles, but you want a route to be able to, I've always liked them this way. Off peak, you lay down. Hold your time back, okay? Because you're easily run ahead. During peak, run your route.
Yes,
Hit,
and
get,
follow
pick up and go.
up to that, I've really been trying to wrap my mind around why that we're having the issues with the app that we're having. And it seems like, as I'm watching the bus, it's like between the long time points where there's been issues. So if the increase in, I just want us to be aware of this, like on the record, aware of the fact that we removed a bunch of time points, which could be a factor in the on-time performance. Because if you're late between point 1 and 3, and that used to be between 1 and 8, you were late 8 times, not 1 time. But the other factor is that if the app is having issues with the GPS, whether it's, I think the word latency in the GPS or something like that, I'll just see it like go off the grid and then it pops back up after a time point. So I'm wondering if that's what's happening with the app. I'm just
I think that's the
throwing
issues we're
all
having
these.
with the system tracker, and it has dead spots. I think that's our biggest issue with that, and that's what's causing your issue. And we're looking at options to try and address the dead spots. If it goes dead, it's going to fall back to schedule, okay?
Right.
Which is going to give you different timing. When you're watching it live, and it goes into a dead spot, it's gonna abruptly move to a scheduled time.
Yeah, but it
which-
still has the GPS signal, and so as I'm running to the stop and watching it pass, and I look at the app and it says 4 minutes, but it says the GPS is on, like, something's happening there. I know there's still issues with the app,
Yeah.
I just feel like these things might be tied together, because it all happen at the same time. So,
Also have a bit to add, to your first one about, the reduction of time points is less opportunities for, the bus to be late. Barry, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was October when we started collecting data on the reduced number of time points, so that we could be able to compare time points, or the reduced amount of time points with the old schedule to the reduced
Oh,
amount on
cool.
this schedule.
That's
So
smart.
all
Oh, that
the
makes
Swiftly
sense.
reports you've been getting since October reflect the reduced
The
amount of time
reduced number of
points.
time points.
okay.
That's good to know, so maybe a, comparison side by side would help this committee just be better informed, especially if we have.
And the last part of my update is thank you for everyone who was out there, because it was cold, but met a lot of really great people and
Let me back that up. That was a tremendous effort on the transit committee's part to get out there and take care of it. It was very, very helpful. It allowed us operations to stick with operations, get things done. You guys got information out to the passengers. It was very much appreciated.
During that time, I did a little bit, but I could have did more, but I commend this young lady here. Every time, I was real busy that week, and every time I came out, I seen Marcella, I seen Elizabeth, and I seen this young Kate, I seen this young lady. They were on it like bees on honey. And it was cold outside. I mean, frigid cold. So I commend Marcella, Elizabeth, and this young lady. They were there. And like I said, I was very busy that week, and I had to get out in it. But to be out there like they was every time, I mean, I had things to do, like 2 or 3 things to do a day, and every time I get on the bus, get back off the bus, transfer to another bus.
They were there.
They were there, yeah, they did.
Awesome.
They were.
Marcella, can you tell me really quick, some of the issues that were going on was the eastbound part of the WE1 when it just went east, and there was, discussion discussion about breaking off that route because it was really difficult when you looked at the W1, the W2 to realize that you had a just eastbound route. And there was talk about, I talked with some of the bus drivers and staff of our TPF that were out there. How's that been resolved with the confusion about the eastbound only route?
So right now, and Barry, correct me if I'm, I think drivers are using the eastbound like code. And we're just waiting on the software from the company so that we can program a different head sign that says eastbound when it's going towards the VA hospital, and then downtown when it's going downtown, so you know that that's not the bus that you catch to get all the way to New Wester Highway.
So it really boiled down to the drivers understanding fully how it worked, and then the passengers going through that process and understanding what the head sign's gonna say for you to go eastbound only. So it took a little bit to get through all that. We're not running it any different than we were the first day. But the head sign issue is one that we wanna do an update.
Okay.
And I think it'll help it, it'll help it be clear.
Okay, good, because I know the head sign, the head sign issue with the digital feed and
Yeah.
some of the announcements were still being kind of worked out
Yeah.
during the transition.
But also when you get the board up there, that'd help out tremendously.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know when I was riding the W1 back in town, downtown, after the things had changed, the person at the ceiling was still saying, "Don't go down."
Barking the wrong route. Yeah. We've changed, I mean, we were able to get some adjustments made and things, it was last minute, making sure all those things were updated. All weekend and then the week after. And then you have to upload all that stuff to each and every individual vehicle and head sign, so we went through a couple of different iterations.
And I just wanna say that, I know that all of us that were out there talked a lot to riders, and to drivers. And I think the reason why, when we get into this later, is that the number one thing we heard across the board, I think that was heard loud and clear, is when the schedules change, I think a lot of people thought that the extended service hours were part of the route changes. That was very clear when we were out there, is what happened to the extended service hours. We thought this went hand in hand with the route changes. We heard time and time again, where the extended service hours, And then secondly is, why is that waiting room closed? Why is that waiting room closed at the coldest parts of the year? And we kind of heard, I think those are the two biggest things I heard in my 8 or 9 days out there over and over and over. So I know we're gonna get into, it's good to hear that February 2nd, that waiting room will be open. But I know that was such a concern that we heard over and over and over again.
In addition to evening service hours, the biggest concern I heard was from South Asheville riders. So letting them know that while funding isn't identified yet, South Asheville is in fiscal year 2. And it was interesting because normally when I'm at the transit center, I'm getting off my bus to go to the next bus or to go to the next thing. But in the situation where you're there for 3 or 4 hours at a time, you see someone waiting an hour for their bus at the transit center because they're waiting to get to South Asheville on the S3 or the S6. That I know that there's a need, and I got to know some of those neighbors closely because I spent a lot of time with them over the first 2 weeks. I also had heard concern from Annie Avery, who wants me to carry forward her support for the Broadway route to Weaverville, which is in fiscal year 3 of the Transit Master Plan, and that former Transit Committee member Bruce Emery has again suggested that the N1 and N2 crosstown with S4, quote, should be marketed as a crosstown service similar to the east and west crosstowns, end quote. That seemed to be consistent with his advice before, that if we show folks what a crosstown looks like north and south, they will use that service. Right now, they may not know that it's available.
Yeah, I did an interview with the UNCA newspaper, and that's the one that I focused on, and they were like, what? That's awesome, and I kind of framed it as a crosstown, but I know that was, at least for the person I talked to that was writing for the paper, was like, that's fantastic. That's great news. We need to hear more about that, and we're thrilled with that route. thoughts, feedback from you
Couple.
to say?
Yeah, I talked to a couple of people who actually got off of their bus, not knowing that it was a cross-town route, only then to get back on the bus that they just got off of. And it occurred to me that as a bus is pulling into the transit center, for example, the N1 is pulling, it's served N1, it's coming into the transit center, a bus driver could announce, this bus will now be serving Route S4, which I think was what the connection is, the crosstown, right? And that would be helpful for riders who are new and haven't gotten used to this crosstown route. That would be very helpful, I think.
Well, one thing that I really didn't appreciate about the changing of the guard, so to speak, on January 5th, was when we first got out there, first 4 hours, Jeff and I were out there, we only had just the routes that were changing. And we had already did our ambassador meeting, and from the ambassador meeting going out there on the dock, I thought we were gonna have necessarily the route changes in our hands per se. But we didn't get that. So that was 4 hours out there of just giving out something that's gonna change, you know, in these places. I didn't appreciate that, but I did, you know, the hours, I put in my hours. But, it's just disseminating information, but I would have loved to have routes. The ones that I got off the ambassador table, I passed those out. People were just tremendously glad to get those. And I felt really as though if we had the route changes when we first started standing out there, it would have been greatly appreciated. And like I said, when I gave those route changes out, oh, people were just saying, thank you, you know?
We had a talk about this, so I just wanna confirm what you're saying. When you say route changes, you mean the maps?
Yes, with the times changed and everything.
Yeah.
We were just passing out the leaflets,
That
so to
was like
speak,
the
yeah.
first couple.
But, you know, I stood out there, you know, I put in my time, you know, I put in, you know, good time. But I would just, cause I even, called Marcella and asked her about that, and, she gave me an explanation, to which didn't satisfy me, but I took the explanation and I shut my mouth and I went ahead and I did my job. But like you said, in the outcome, we did persevere, and, you know, that's what we're here for. Our combined group, we persevered, and I wanna thank y'all for, you know, being out there just as well as I did.
Just we move on.
Yep. So, any other discussion, we're good? Okay, so I'm gonna apologize because in the transit goals, I can't bring them up and being blind, I can't see them. I'm gonna have this on the agenda in February too, but I think I sent this out in an email. You all should have gotten, it wasn't attached, but I sent it out in the email, the latest version of the transit goals and strategies, that we did at the retreat. I took out the ones we already accomplished. I admit that I polished the language, I kinda changed some of it, there was some redundancy, I tried to minimize it, I kinda fleshed out some of the strategies a little bit, but I do strategic planning, so I couldn't help it. And I kinda based on board discussions. So, what I wanna do today, cause we have so much other stuff on the agenda with the transit goals, and since, we have 3 folks that are new, which by the way, I did send them out the transit goals in advance, so they had them. They also got what, those of us that were already on the committee, which was our annual report for the year, to get them up to speed, they got that in advance, but I wanna give them a little bit more time to kind of absorb that. So the discussion I was thinking that we'd have today is we look at the 3 main areas of our goals, which is, the transit committee supporting the implementation of the transit master plan, the transit committee supporting full funding and a funding source, and basically, the short range and long range, funding of the implementation of the transit master plan, transit in general, moving forward. And the third area being the broad kind of better service, customer service, let's make this service better area, with the 3 kind of main overarching themes, and within it, the goals and strategies. Looking at it, I think what I asked folks today is, can we have people kind of say which of the goals and strategies or what goal areas they would like to work on
I can
within
start.
those? Yeah,
So my interest is customer service.
right. Yeah.
we went, cause I have the goals here, I
You
can
wanna
just
do
do
the
goal
order?
one, and then we could be like,
Yeah,
anyone
Pam,
who's
thank
in-
you.
Would that be okay?
You can be my.
Alright.
Thank you.
So goal number one is identify and support a dedicated transit fund. That looks like identify possible funding sources, educate transit committee members about possible funding sources, look at what's done by Community Roots and other advocacy groups, draft letters in support of dedicated funding to city council and the county, attend county meetings to assure, focus on funding, identify organizations and business who support funding, and obtain artsy and better buses together involvement in advocating for dedicated funding. So this is like your show me the money team.
Yeah, and I would like to, I'm just gonna put out there that I think the majority of us should be on the show me the money team, because there's power in numbers, and so I wanted to put out there, I think on most of them, especially this one though, in funding, even in TMP implementation, that large goal area, we need a lot of folks, not just one person to say, but, a critical mass of people on this committee taking that on. I will take on all those in funding. Who else with me? Okay. Paul said, yeah, he's in. Who else? Tori. Georgia.
Yeah, I mean, I'm involved in the funding stuff. I'm a little concerned about us trying to get through these 13 goals with many sub-goals. I feel like it's gonna take a really long time.
The only thing from personal experience over the years, if we don't sit here and do it, it won't get done.
You know?
Yeah. And we're not, yeah, today we're just kinda gonna say who wants to work on this goal area.
So goal
quickly.
2 is
Yeah.
preserve, increase current transit funding. Show up to council meetings and talk about transit, talk or stay current with risks to funding and available funds. So this is like the preservation
Yeah,
side, not
yeah.
the new side.
And making sure that we, right. I'm on board with all of them.
Same.
Yeah. Anything that has to do with funding, I'm on board.
Okay? Number 3 is pursue hotel occupancy tax funds for transit.
Yep.
Number 4 is, if I'm missing you, please, just say I'm in or something
Just
like
say
that.
I'm in, so we can just at least get,
Number 4 is investigate possibilities to decrease transit cost options. Number 5 is develop and evaluate a clear communication plan for transit committee to communicate to the public about January 2020 changes. Wait.
Is that done?
no, it's, I put it as ongoing, if you read my strategies, the idea is
the
that.
hours.
Is that the route change, yeah, it's gonna, basically to me, it's an ongoing process of change. It could, and implementation and looking at, just kind of the discussion we had, that we just need to keep eyes on
So
it.
is that
but
need to be, amended to say fiscal year 1 changes, not January 2020?
Yeah, that's good. I'm on board with that one too. I heard a yeah. Okay.
So we got John and Beth on that.
Yeah.
Number 6, explore implementation of transit master plan year 2, so transit committee has a clear understanding of proposed changes and their cost. I'm gonna keep going, we can always go back.
Yeah, that's
And we
good
can
to
always
have
ask
eyes on year
questions,
two.
'cause we
Yeah,
have next
that's a good
month's
time,
one.
yeah.
7 is advocate for fully funding transit master plan in fiscal year 2020, including immediate funding for increased service hours.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're all in. And
So, all TC members. Alright, ensure advisement includes city's adopted goals and resiliency goals.
I'm in on that.
Thank you, Tori. Explore use of GIS mapping and other data to inform high-need areas and future changes to the transit master plan.
I'm interested in that, but I can't do that alone.
in that, looking at data to inform the updates to the transit master plan.
I know some of the data folks that can say like the GIS folks.
Tori, help, you in.
Develop clear processes for the transit committee to gather feedback from the public and communicate close the loop is what it says.
Yeah,
I'm
Yes.
down with that too. I feel like that could just get absorbed into time.
yeah,
Honestly,
it could,
it's sort of the end of the problem.
Yeah.
I'll be doing some of that today.
yeah,
I'm gonna put a note there, absorb into 10.
okay, I can do
Okay,
that.
develop assessment scorecard to collect feedback from riders.
I can do that.
And then last is engage in ongoing effort to support drivers.
Yes.
And you have it, list. And all but one of them had a person on it, which was exploring implementation of Transit Master Plan Year 2, so the Transit Committee has a clear understanding of proposed changes and their costs. That has kind of already been identified by staff.
Yeah, I just think it's something that we need to, as the numbers kind of shift and move, as we get into the budget process, we just, I think, all need to have eyes on that. Or as many of us,
So
because
all
you know
eyes.
how the numbers change, can change, we need to be on top of that conversation.
So I can put
My
those
thought.
in the minutes and then send them
Yep.
attached to the rest of the minutes so that you can move forward from there if that works.
Yeah, and then we can kind of flesh out these, discussions in these areas as they arise. And I'm hoping, was there anything, I know there's a lot of goals, we have the whole year, I think we've actually made progress on some of them already, and when I look back, I was like, dang, we're kind of moving forward on a lot of these.
Question.
Yeah.
If we know what area we want to work in and we see the minutes, can we start meeting
Yeah.
to coordinate efforts around that? And
Yeah.
how does that fit with the meeting policy
So
outside of?
we used to do breakout meetings.
Yep.
If you're going to have more than 2 people, even though it's technically it should be a quorum, but I think that the legal staff, if you look back at the minutes, said that if anytime it's gonna be like 3 or more people, it has to be noticed. And so you can just let staff know. One of the things we had success with last time was, the transit staff would set up a conference call so that one person would be there accepting the call, but the rest of the members of that subcommittee could call in. So it made the meeting more accessible, so people didn't have to leave where they were, whether it was work or home.
Yeah.
So staff has been really helpful in the past with just like set up a time, a meeting conference room and a phone.
Yeah, I like that idea, because I think you're right, I think it's, we can do some work in here, there's a lot of work that needs to be done outside of here in addition to. So, I think if it's your goal area and you're working on it, I would say let's just kind of put it out there that we wanna have some meeting time and make it happen.
I also think, I think 2 and 3 could be absorbed into each other as well, since one of them is literally about acquiring funding.
Okay. Yeah, I'm reading in my head right now, yeah, I get, yeah, okay. Good. Okay, so we'll continue to move, forward with these, probably in February, we'll have some discussion of some in particular. Okay. All right, we are on to new business now in the meeting, and we are going to be talking about the transit budget review. You had an attachment.
request for details as to what goes into the numbers. And so one of the things we did was basically break it down. We have 2 account codes where we charge items to. So one of them is the operations where we charge a number of all the operating stuff we do, for instance, a contract and everything, to that account code, and that is 951. There are a whole bunch of numbers that goes with it, but I didn't want to bore you guys. So basically, if I may go over here. So basically, if you look at the very first item, it is the transit operations, the money for contractor. And then the second item is paratransit. And we did share with the group in terms of the fact that that number may go up because we're gonna go out for RFP and work with the county. So that is the estimated amount. And then as you look at, the next one is contractor services. We have a number of contracts we work with. You know, for instance, the software, the head signs that we were talking about, Swiftly, all those different things we have contracts for. And so that number adds up to the 85,000 you see there. The next one is equipment, maintenance equipment, various equipment like bus stops, signage, and all that stuff. That is the number. And then building, if there is any issue with the transit maintenance facility, that's where we charge some of the staff to. And then we have supplies, other, software and marketing, fuel charges, and as well as electricity. Because of the new buses, electric buses that we have, that number has gone up. And so we estimated the number to be 70,000. So for operations, that number is over $11 million. And then the next set is for admin, transit admin. For instance, myself and Marcella, all the different things we do. Quality of service award is, I believe, something we have in our budget for, let's say, a staff member does an outstanding thing. You know, there's a recommendation that goes to the city manager where part of that money could be given to that staff for such. So it could be Marcella, you know, based on, you know, all the extraordinary stuff that she did for the service change. We also have some contractor service here. And during the service change, we had to work with a planning consultant in terms of assisting us with some of the additional things that we need. And so that is charged to that line item. Services, we advertise our service in terms of getting the word out and everything. So that is charged to that line item. And then training. One of the things that we do to keep on top of all the different things that are coming up, we have a number of training courses that we take to make sure that we're up to date on all the different industry information that is coming up. So for instance, if there is, let's say, DBE in terms of the new federal regulations that we need to understand to do our job, we go to training to better get the information to do that. Dues and subscription. We also belong to professional services to make sure that if we have licenses, we're able to keep them up, take classes to keep up the licenses that we have. So that is charged to that line item. Hiring and promotion in terms of all the details that goes into making sure that we advertise, you know, job descriptions throughout various newsletters, newspapers to ensure that we have quality candidates that apply for positions that we advertise. And then we have internal programming, external programming. Then we have supplies, postage, different materials, insurance and bonds, bank fees, and then the list goes on. Radio charges, we also, make sure that we have some radio in terms of what we have on the buses, right, Barry? Yeah, on the buses. And then fleet maintenance, making sure that our fleet is maintained in addition to other stuff that staff do. And cost allocation charges, that actually, we are required to perform financial audits of the funds that we use by the federal government. And so one of the things we do is we partner with the finance department to conduct that financial audit for us. And then during that triennial, that is done each year. And so once that information is completed, we have that information available for distribution to either the state or also the federal government. That amount comes to about a little over 300,000. And then when you combine the two amounts, it boils down to over 12 million. And that's basically, if you recall, those were some of the numbers we shared with the group on the last meeting.
I have some questions.
Sure.
First, I've been serving on the Transit Committee for 4 years, and I've never had this detailed of a description, so thank you. I know in the midst of all this work you've been doing, I really appreciate you taking the time and meeting our request. So, now that I understand what cost allocation charges is, it's a fairly large number. How often does the city have to budget for that? And did we see that in the budget last year? Because it seemed like it would be incurred this fiscal cycle.
I believe it was included in the budget last year, but I think this is the first time we're calling it out, as you indicated, basically showing all the different line items that goes into the specific account.
So when will we see it again? It's regular, right?
Probably next year when we do, when I say next year, next fiscal year budget in terms of, this is the estimate. It could be the same amount or less or more than that, but, it's partnering with our finance department to conduct audit of our financials for us.
A follow-up question about fare box maintenance, and how this is, I'm really getting at this about this idea of like, what is the cost of removing the barrier to entry, zero fare, fare free, whatever we wanna call it. Can we get a breakout of that 8.8 million on what fare box maintenance is, printing, accounting costs, how much money it costs for us to take people's money?
In terms of the fare boxes we have on the buses.
Yeah, how much of, is it like broken in, is it broken out of the accounting process? So there's hours for the accounting, the fare boxes, the maintenance, the ticket printing, the advertisement. So there's, I know that it costs money to take money.
Off the top of my head, especially for advertisement, you probably see an increase in that activity during service change. You know, because we have to advertise all the services, the new changes and everything, all the different materials and promotional items that we have to put out there. But once service, we implement service, that number is very low until we start that process again. So, we will definitely provide, the information you requested,
So studies show that for every dollar invested in transit, there's a $4 return on investment to the community, mostly because dollars are cycled back into the local economy, which in turn generates a higher sales tax revenue. So I was looking to see, a few years ago, we looked at the data for our passport partners. So for folks that are new, Mission Hospital, Green Opportunities, AV Tech, and UNCA pay for the fares of their associated riders, essentially eliminating their fares. So have the glitches that were happening with that passenger counter been addressed since that series of buttons required to push was resulting in flawed data? Like, we don't know how many times we were charging folks.
I believe so, right, Barry? In terms of the buttons of the fare boxes.
we process the method of
So,
payment, yeah.
I think it would benefit this group to see a year-to-year data comparison for maybe like the past 5 years of fees charged to our partners.
Okay.
Just so the group can know, like, how many UNCA students are riding and how much do we charge UNCA instead of students?
Okay, and should we limit that to just the members of the passport
question was, have any new partners joined or have any left?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
I don't believe so. And so one of the things we talked about is potentially marketing the program to other organizations or agencies that may be interested in doing that.
Since the city and county employees ride the bus for free, how does the city charge itself?
Boy, I would have to get.
And lastly, I noticed at the January 14th council meeting, at about 37 minutes in, Councilwoman Whistler brought forward the county subsidy for fare free and wanted to clarify. So I heard staff say that fare free funding and planning was, quote, not in the transit master plan, end quote. So I will refer to the 24 times it is listed in the transit master plan, including the current fare free downtown zone that is not promoted. On page 45, quote, conversely, consideration of fare fee system would provide significant benefits to low-income persons and potentially attract additional ridership. And so if we know that the barrier is really, there'll be too many people riding the bus, then I think that would benefit for the transit.
And one of the things we're actually doing is looking at transit systems across the nation that may have implemented fare free for their services. And as I was doing that, I was also looking at some of the pros and cons in terms of, yes, there's increase of ridership and everything, but the other part of that is you want to make sure that you have equipment available to be able to serve the increase in ridership. So those are some of the things that before we bring something to the TCE group, we want to do an extensive research into what some of those agencies have done, what are the benefits. Of course, there are benefits to it, but what does the city have to do to make sure that we're prepared for that specifically?
I've already taken up too much time. So.
Okay, I have a question about the contracted services in the first section. The second section are about 150K. Are those reoccurring, or how malleable are those over time in terms of contracted services?
I want to say some of those are reoccurring.
Here's the top search result.
In terms of specific projects that we have in mind. So for instance, in the current year budget, if you recall, when the city council approved the 1.5 or 1.2 million, included in that amount is the ability to conduct a feasibility study, maintenance feasibility study. So depending on what the project is, that amount could go up or could go down.
Is that facility study in the contracted services and what we're looking at right now?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so
Yeah.
that, okay.
Yes.
Good.
Yes.
Thank you for clarifying that. Any other questions about the detailed breakdown that we have in front of us?
I'll just affirm Kim's questions about the ridership and passport systems and affirm marketing to other groups like AV Tech who maybe benefit from the passport system.
They are a passport.
Yeah, I understand, we may have reached out to them, I'm not sure how far back, but that is one of the things we have on the horizon in terms of reaching out to them, especially knowing that we've increased service that goes back and forth to the campus. So those are some of the things that we are planning on doing.
Any other questions?
Thomas, is this where you want to answer your question?
Yeah, I mean, I guess my concern is the TMP did the analysis, they researched the data available and concluded to do fare-free trials. So I feel like we just need to try it and see what happens. I mean, I understand the reluctance to want to go fully fare-free, but what I don't understand is just reanalyzing it. I think there's not gonna be great data. At least that's what the consultants that we paid concluded. And then they recommended trying it out. So the trials were supposed to start last July. So it's just kind of where I'm at with it.
Does anybody offhand remember what the ticket fare generation was?
About 700.
700.
Okay, so we're making
Well, plus
700,000.
paratransit.
ridership went up for that 90 days 58.5%.
Yeah.
Auntie, just on the funding point, I appreciate that, but we also have an op-ed from the chair of the county commission expressing interest in funding exactly this for the city to the tune of $1 million. And of course, it may not be enough, and we may need to fight for more funding, but, you know, it's not like it's just us in this room here. There are other people interested in this.
Yeah, but I think he's also letting go of paratransit, correct? The
Right,
county.
so that's
So
another
that's
side.
just money moving around a little bit, so we have to, I think, put that on the table too.
I just wanted to put out there, the Times published an article on January 14th called "Should Public Transit Be Free?" And within the article, it had several links embedded to various city studies on their decisions to make transit free. So some of those were Kansas City, Olympia, Lawrence, Massachusetts, etc. And so one of them actually they put in the city of Worcester's report on decision and how they were implemented.
Any other questions here, or discussion we need to have?
I have one. This is like the 4th month in a row that I'm hoping we can get some outpacing data on fuel savings.
Yeah.
So we know like when our electric buses are being used, what is the actual cost savings? And I don't know, we're only gonna see like fuel to electricity comparison, but we acknowledge that there's different costs associated when we use carbon fossil fuels.
We're working on it.
Excellent.
Just a question for the committee, I mean, in terms of what we're looking at in terms of fare free, what are we expecting to be the next step? What are we as a committee asking, from the city, or what are we advocating for?
I think it sounds like what we want to.
Heard Eunice wants to do more analysis.
Yeah, what I'm hearing
So,
is that
okay.
we're gonna, look at data, look at studies, look at benchmarking, look at what the impact would be. Look at what Kim asked for, I believe, is what's the cost of actually collecting fare? And what happens if you didn't do that cost, I think that's kind of the balance between that and also looking at other systems, the decision-making process of getting rid of, fare and how they made a decision, and also looking at making paratransit free and what the impact that would be. That's what I'm hearing.
And can that be on next month's agenda?
Yeah, I mean, oh gosh, I guess it's a decision, so yeah.
We'll definitely try.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
I would say I'm asking for the trials to happen, so just personally, I think we can analyze it to death. And it's in the TMP, most of what we're talking about here, so.
So Thomas, the second, thing that maybe staff brings to us is basically what would it take for the trials to happen in terms of preparation and planning on their end?
That would be great.
Is that something that's doable for staff to say, if we ran these trials as indicated in the transit master plan, here's what the planning steps need to be, and here's a proposed timeline for making that happen?
We'll try to, bring that information forward.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions about?
Thomas, you're not making a motion on that, right? You're just asking for information?
Yeah, I mean, I asked for it to be on this month's agenda, so if it can be on next month's agenda.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just enough, you know, I mean, if we're not gonna do it, I'd at least like it to be transparent. I just don't wanna keep talking about it, because if staff is against it, then we can advocate as we can. It's in the plan, so
Yeah.
I'm following the plan
Yeah.
and advocating for the plan.
I think while we're on that, I talked at the beginning about, that I kind of found when I went back that we didn't actually make a formal recommendation for the extended service hours, which is also part of the plan. That we did not have a formal vote, to push that forward, to recommend that that be done in fiscal year 2020. It was something that came up at the city council meeting. I don't remember what minute stamp it was at, but, Better Buses came up and said that they were told by the city manager that it could happen in 2020, and there was some discussion about why it couldn't. So I don't know how the rest of the committee feels, but I know tonight at city council, there's gonna be a more push for the extended service hours that was supposed to happen. It was a huge, concern of the riders I'll make that motion. Second, any discussion of that?
More specific, I'm looking at the Just Economics proposal, and it says, extending bus service hours by June. So is what you're proposing is that extended service hours begin in full by June 2020?
Correct. So,
Just want that to
what
be
we've
clear.
learned about this process is if we wait until the budget cycle,
Yeah,
that's not
yeah.
enough time for staff to prepare. So if the city council were to make a budget amendment for the extended service hours that go till 10 PM on all routes, were funded for January 1. And then the issue was really truly that we didn't have the buses or we didn't have the staff, then at least funding wouldn't be the barrier. Because if we wait until July 1 for the funding, for the extended service hours, the planning won't happen until July. So it won't happen till October or maybe even January 2021. And that puts the entire transit master plan further back behind than we already are.
So we're asking for a budget amendment.
We're asking for a budget amendment so that the funding is not the barrier, and so
That's
staff
right.
can prepare.
Right.
That's my understanding.
Yeah. Yeah, we're asking for a budget amendment so that the funds we put forward in the plan can move forward for implementation in June, 2020.
And I'm happy to suspend the rules to allow public comment. If I were to receive a second, then members of the public can speak.
I'm gonna second that.
All in favor?
On that.
Is there any public comment?
Okay.
I do have some concern about the rest of the items on the agenda, so I'd like it to be keep short.
Sure. Can we keep it 10 minutes?
I'm gonna keep it real quick.
Thank
I'm
you.
Vicky Meath from Just Economics and representing Better Buses Together, and we are going to council again. We spent 20 days of advocating for transit in October. We've been pushing for this budget amendment. We pushed for the full year of the transit master plan to be funded in the last budget, and we're going to council once again. Tonight after council, we're gonna be walking a community member home that would be benefit from extended evening service hours. And I just wanna thank this committee and continually support the idea that extended bus hours are part of the first year of the transit master plan, and we don't wanna see it get behind. Thanks.
Thank you. I have
Yeah.
a question. What, I don't think I've read this anywhere, but what is the actual
Before-
extension of hours? What are things supposed to be?
Before, just to like a point of order issue, because we opened the public comment, we need to close the public comment, which
Okay.
means making sure that anyone else wouldn't have had public comment.
You're right.
Yeah.
Sorry.
My name's Matthew Sophia, just one comment. I've heard several people say that they wish buses run later because they do work second shift and they have to figure out how to get home.
Thank you. Anyone else for public comment? I'm gonna close public comment and move forward.
What if we wanna ask the public a question?
Can we do that?
I don't think that we can
I don't
address
think
the
we
public.
can. Yeah.
But then John had a question about what the evening
Yeah,
service hours
Yeah.
are.
what's the actual extension of hours? What are the hours we're looking at?
The actual hours would entail, for instance, right now we have routes that end, let's say 11 o'clock or midnight, and there are some routes that end maybe 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock.
Right.
So the goal is to take a look at some of those routes and see the possibility of extending it so that we can close later than the times that is involved.
So like have some routes that go to 11 and then some routes go till
Midnight.
midnight,
Yeah.
1 AM, whatever,
Yeah,
to take
yeah.
care of the people in the, I mean, I agree with that. There's people in the service industry like myself that can't get home on the bus, period. right
And
now.
John, to add to that, it's, when I did the math on the routes, it's about 30% of our routes that end at or before 8 o'clock.
That
And
was
part
my
of that is
question.
also doing the analysis, so we have routes that are highly utilized with some routes that are not. And
Right.
so looking at everything else and making sure that we're able to extend that.
Harvey, did you have something?
Yeah, that was my question, what, John was talking about. What time
Yeah.
do we extend it?
Just, yeah, reading from the TMP, it's like Kim said, every route until 10 PM, with some until midnight,
Yeah.
so.
did ask for a lot, so we'll work together on getting as much in as we can. I just wanted to put that out there. Okay, we can move fast, this other item, and I can kind of what we're doing before we go to the service animal policy. This was my letter, so we talked about looking at other areas of potential, funding streams for transit. One of those funding streams is Buncombe County Tourism Development Authority Agency money. What you've probably heard going around is likely at some point that the 75-25% split, which is 25 to be reinvested back into the community and activities that could also boost tourism, but not advertising, which is the 75%. That might be changed. The Multimodal Transportation Commission, and I don't know if this letter went to City Council, but I think it is or might be going to, is supporting the change in that formula, which City Council will have to, I think, do a legislative change, which will mean that the split will become 66% into advertising and 33% reinvested into infrastructure and other type things that also have an impact on tourism. So this is just a first draft of something that I did to go after the BCTDA funding. We can talk about it a little bit today, we can talk about it later, but I haven't sent it to anyone. This is my first draft, because we did say in our goals that we were gonna try to justify, what we were gonna do with BCTDA funding. So this is my first pass at, because I think transit should get some of that money, and the way to get some of that money, is I focused on the downtown circulator, which is in the transit master plan, already. So it does not deviate from the plan, and it's been talked about in Asheville for a very long time. We've been talking to people in Asheville, like, we've been talking about this for like 10 years. So this was just my first pass at something that we could draft potentially to make a statement about, what could potentially be funded for transit with that money as one of the projects.
I think your letter is well written. I'd be willing to motion that we, move forward with it and authorize you to send it out.
I'll also say thank you, and because this may address the carbon footprint for our visitors, increase benefit for our workforce, connect local businesses to employees and customers, increase opportunities for successful sub-hubs downtown, and begin a funding partnership that will accelerate funding the rest of the transit master plan, I will second.
Okay. Is there any discussion? Huh? All in favor, I guess? Okay,
Aye.
Question, do you wanna send this as a committee, or do you want me to send this as an individual, as the chair?
My motion, my intent was to
Okay.
have it come from the committee.
Okay, and is that what we voted on? I just wanna make sure that that's transparent, that we're voting on it coming from the committee.
Committee,
Okay. Okay, good.
ask for nays.
Are there any nays? I'm so sorry. I'll do that. Okay, thanks. Thank you, guys. So the next, item on our agenda is the service animal policy. We've been talking that for a while. I'm happy to see this. Marcella, you said y'all gonna present that?
Yeah, so this is our service animal policy. It was sent out and attached. But basically Jessica, worked with our legal team to make sure that our service animal policy complied with ADA regulations. And as far as the next steps, it would be going to Ken and the city manager to ratify it as policy. And Eunice, correct me if I'm wrong, but it aligns with ADA where, operators or staff can only ever ask the task that the animal is trained to perform. I'm blanking on the second question. Yeah,
Is that a service animal?
Yes.
What does the service animal
Right.
do? What tasks do they perform for you?
Yeah, so, I don't know if there were any comments from y'all, but yeah, Jessica and,
good reading. And then the other animals, they were talking about, just like a comfort animal, they would have to be in a cage.
So the pet policy, is separate than this, and, what we decided on internally is that if you, like, let's say you're taking your cat to the vet, it has to be in a pet carrying container and fit in your lap. Yeah, so any animal that is not a service animal needs to fit in that criteria.
Kyle, tell the story you told about what you would do as a cook.
Well, that was all informal. In the restaurant, I used to be a cook, and so we'd walk out and ask the person, like, can we pet your dog? And if they said yes, we'd ask them, we'd get their food to go and ask them to leave, basically. That's not what this is, so.
Oh, because
I will say, just as a personal experience from this past
Yeah.
week, there was a dog just jumping around this week on the W2.
Yeah.
Like lap hopping. So.
Yeah.
Just wanted to acknowledge Matthew, who is here,
Yeah.
who's part of the public, has a service animal. He raised his
Right.
hand,
Yeah.
and I don't think he can speak during this
Yeah,
part of the
he can,
meeting,
yeah.
but I at least wanted to acknowledge that
No,
your
I-
hand raised was seen.
Yeah, I see you.
You can make a motion to suspend the rules.
I actually see you.
Oh, okay, okay.
I guess I can, and I'll just say as someone who's, visually impaired, I appreciate this, because I saw dogs in strollers getting on the, bus, and then people that actually have service animals, what's happened nationally, getting questions about their dog, where's the certificate? There's no certificate, it's a made-up thing that happened on the internet. So I'm really happy to see this, but, are we okay with suspending it for just a minute to
Motion
have?
to suspend the rules to allow,
Okay, do I have a second on
Second.
that? Okay, all in favor? 1 minute.
Okay.
Thanks, Matt.
As I've said back in December, I trained my dog myself. I got her certified through professional service dog trainer, registered with the ASPCA. I have seen people on the bus with quote service dogs. I call them right out. If I see something that is not service dog material, I call them right out. My last incident was with this one individual who has a small dog, aggressively barks at my dog. But she claims the ADA rules, which is fine, but she got her information through AHO. And I think that is wrong, for that organization to do such a thing. And the dog is clearly not a service dog because of the slight hassles that I went through the first month that I started bringing my dog on the bus. After introducing her, sit down, or you don't tend to stop. After introducing her to public first, taking her to grocery stores and things like that, so I took her on public transportation. So that upsets me, because when I see something that is not what is being represented, I will call it out.
Okay. Thank you.
And have to say.
Yep, good. Any other discussion about this? Okay, wonderful.
are we gonna have a motion to approve it?
Do we have to approve it?
Affirmative.
I don't think so. Do we? No. It's a policy.
Ask for support.
You wanna do a motion to support this? Yeah, I think we're okay. Okay. Okay,
Thank
All
you,
right.
staff.
thank you. I'm thrilled. Our next item is, oh yes. So,
Mission.
huh?
The
The commission, okay, so another thing that wasn't in any of our goals, I will just say, we can go through this really quickly, this is kind of one of my, burning issues that I wanna work on before I leave the city, is to reestablish the transit committee as a transit commission. Real quickly, I will say that the transit used to be an authority. When they were authority, I had a long talk with Tom Holland, who's the head of that authority. When transit was authority, they worked directly with the contractor to propose the budget. They had one transit planning manager, but basically it was, a relationship between the transit authority and the contractor that ran the system. This is what needs to be done, this is the budget, they send it up to city council, that looks good, it was running great, wonderful. 1998, transit was gone from an authority to a commission because it was the biggest line item in the city's budget at that time. So what happened was, there was a couple more staff put on it, and now as a commission, they still directly advise council, but there was more staff members involved in the discussions between the contractor and, the commission, but they still had a kind of a close relationship and open discussion. What happened, now is that we are now a committee. We are a committee under the Multimodal Transportation Commission, both Kim and I sit on that commission. I can tell you, since I've been sitting on that commission, we have greenways on that commission, we have bike ped on that commission, we have trains on the commission. We also talk about parking, which we did the last time. We also talk about right-of-way, closures on that commission. We have a packed agenda, and we don't ever deep dive, I will say, into transit issues. There's also a body that has very few, riders, I'll just put it out there, very few people that ride the bus frequently, on the Multimodal Transportation Commission. Because we're a committee, we can no longer directly advise council. We have to go through the Multimodal Commission. They had to actually vote on whether we could put our 3 new members on. We could not do that or suggest that to city council. So I took a shot, across the bow, so to speak, and I wrote a letter, myself to city council, proposing a different, makeup of the Multimodal Transportation Commission and rolling transit off of that commission and reestablish it as a transit commission, and that's what you have in front of you. I got response from Gwen, who was kind of like, yes, it's a packed agenda, maybe we have consent, whatever. I got a very quick response from Julie Mayfield. Julie Mayfield was the chair of the Transit Commission when it was made part of the Multimodal Transportation Commission. So she was actually the chair when it rolled under. She immediately got back to me and said, I always had concerns about this. I think transit is a different animal. You need to propose this to multimodal and to Richley to put it on the agenda, and multimodal will have to vote to basically set you free and make that motion to city council. So that's the path I have decided to move down. Any discussion or thoughts? The idea was that we're a big line item, we're a big part of this community, we need to directly advise council. That's the way it should be.
Additionally, I'll say as a 4-year member of the Multimodal Transportation Commission, we are getting ready to enter into a conversation with the GAP plan, which is gonna be greenways, accessibility, and pedestrian.
Right.
And when that happens, there's gonna be a big conversation like we did with the transit master plan, where we're gonna really have to dig into what does it mean to be an accessible city and a safe place to walk and bike. So, it really is an opportunity to value the volunteers like us who are showing up. Right now, staff, bless their hearts, show up to the multimodal, the transit committee, the greenways, and the bike ped. So if there was a GAP or multimodal commission and then a transit commission that had liaisons between, you could still have planning and zoning, you could still have neighborhood advisory committee.
Right.
But it may value all of our volunteers' time and our staff's time better.
Yep. Yeah. It's a more efficient, effective, and I think it brings everything more to the front, instead of kind of watering down some of these conversations and some of these, directives and decisions and recommendations to council. It's a more efficient way of doing it, an effective way.
Beth, I think
Yeah.
your letter is very well written. I'd like to move that we appreciate your letter and authorize you as the chair of this committee, send it forward.
Well, I did it already as the but what I really want to do, and I'll put it out there, is I learned a lesson last week at I'm going to bring this forward to you in February. So what the Greenways Commission did is they actually made a resolution for something to put in front of multimodal. And I think the way to do this now, because multimodal is going to have to literally vote to recommend that we are set free from them. I hate to use that terminology, but it's kind of true. You know, we are separated, an amicable separation, is to write this in a resolution format using the Greenways resolution as kind of a model. And I can bring that forward to this committee in February, because we will meet before multimodal, and that way we can, and I'll send it out and wait enough in advance for everybody to have input. That way we will bring forth a resolution to multimodal asking for them to recommend to council that transit become a commission.
Fair enough.
How's that sound?
So what, it sounds like you're asking us to
Yes.
bring forward a resolution at the next meeting?
I will bring, yeah, so what I'll do is I'll take the language, put it in resolution form, I've already begun to do that, and I will have a resolution ready for your vote. For your feedback, I'll send out beforehand, and that we can vote that forward, and it will go to multimodal. It's already on the Multimodal Transportation Commission agenda for February. I have an item on the agenda, they know it's gonna be discussed. I put it in front of Rich Lee, so this will be discussed in the February Multimodal Transportation Commission. My goal is to get them to recommend through that resolution, and to adopt that.
I'm just wondering if you want, maybe a vote of support at this meeting, which you could then build into your resolution that you're going to write.
Okay, that's a good idea.
So I move that, the Transit Committee support Beth in this effort to make the Transit Committee a commission.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? Thank you.
And thanks to Beth.
Yes.
Yes, thank you, Becky.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you, everybody. I just kept telling everybody I had support from transit committee, but it was good to take a vote. I will say, I was like, I think the transit committee is working. Okay, we have our, the updates now from MMTC and other groups. Is there, I know we're kind of pressed on time. Is there anything that we want to say from other groups? Harvey?
Since I was appointed to the Citizens Advisory Committee, last week, we went over, different, things, but basically what we did was, we have the GAP, we have a Greenway Plan, ADA, the transition plan, and then pedestrian plan. What we did was, we brainstormed, came up with a lot of ideas on different things. And what we're doing now is, we're reaching out to different, necessarily, say, knowledgeable people, for viable resources, and getting knowledgeable contacts, for the input that we're going into, like I said, the Greenway, the ADA, and the pedestrian. So each one has a separate entity, and we're going at it that way.
For clarification, the Citizen Advisory Committee? What is that rooted in? I never heard of that
Pardon me?
group. I haven't heard of that group.
You just said it a while ago.
The Citizen Advisory Committee.
Yeah.
Hmm.
You just said it a while ago. Yeah.
So it's with the city?
And we're meeting, like every 3 months.
Oh, okay.
Yes, to see everything.
Thank you.
Marcella volunteered. She said it'd be a good fit for me, and I like it.
I'll put this real quick in the notes, and I'll send it out to you guys. We're still working on it, but, and we're about to talk about this, but, and Eunice, thank you for coming with me. So I met with the low vision support group. There's about 25, 30 members of, the low vision group that are, either totally blind or visually impaired. We had a awesome discussion about using the bus and mountain mobility, and I think I figured out the longer trips that were mentioned, but I'm gonna actually write those up and send those all out to you of, the feedback that I got from that differently able group of folks. Okay, anything else? Staff updates?
Nothing new on the report.
Say that again?
I said there's nothing new on the report. It's the usual updates.
I guess the biggest change is the station ticketing office will be open February 3rd. S2 going westbound, S1, S2, S4, and not the W5.
We're gonna close the north side slips, except for the one closest to the transit center. So all those other three slips will go out onto Ashland initially.
So,
Which one will be on Ashland?
it's gonna be S1, S2, S4, the two crosstowns that are going west, and then, the W5. But we'll have that on the minutes, and I can clarify, just cause I think those are it on the top of my head. I just met with Christy, who does website stuff for the city. They're gonna be pushing that stuff out on social media. We'll send out a text alert and IRID email so that people are aware of the change.
Are you gonna have signage going up?
And yeah, there's gonna be signage at the station.
Really big signage? Because it was so small the last time that, I mean, it was really, like, we had so much, that was another thing we had confusion about, those days that I was out there, people still had no clue, which buses picked up on Ashland.
They're still complaining
No
this
clue.
morning.
Because I was there, giving up these schedules as well. And, but it just had like, this size with
Right.
W2.
Yeah.
And they had it kind of affixed to the
fence.
Yeah.
But then it kind of blew away.
And then there was one on the pole, but there's only one on one pole instead of on lots of poles. So we just need to do way better, bigger, and, signage all over, because I know that was such a point of confusion. And this is gonna
Signage
be a
all over, yeah.
Major point of confusion to now change these.
Sort of like the signage here, and lots of it.
I have a question. I've heard for like maybe 3 years that it was so easy to do Wi-Fi at the transit center, and then it would be during the renovation, so when can we expect Wi-Fi at the transit center?
I think we're supposed to have public Wi-Fi as part of the building reopening.
Okay.
That's my understanding. But let me circle back with IT to make sure that all is smooth, but that was part of the renovation.
Great.
Marcella, have you gotten an update? I know that they're gonna start really quickly after on starting on the platform. Do we know what the timeline is right now for the total completion?
I think the last schedule, so when we were out there and I got the new schedule, I think they were shooting for April.
April for everything, okay. Any other questions? Okay. So we have all of our reports for this month on OTP, WACs for December, by route, and all reports from the contractor. Boy, it's been interesting to see January.
Can we start on that?
Yeah, go ahead, that's where we're at, yeah, that's where we're at.
I'd like
Yep,
to
yep,
continue
yep.
with customer services, my interest, and I think Barry will remember I had a lot to say about the complaint report last month.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have a lot of things to say this month as well. I know you're hiring new people, so it'll be different in January, and I'd like to be able to shape that. There were 9 complaints. In the first one, the complainant asked they be called.
January,
This is for December.
for December, okay.
Yes.
All right.
Asked that they be called. The RATV Dev response says, we sent an email to them. The RATV Dev response said, we pulled the video, but there was no comment on what was seen on the video. Did the video confirm or not confirm what the rider complained about? So a lack of, I'm concerned that there's no follow-up through there.
Okay.
So, exact same thing, on the first and the second one. On the third one, a rider called and complained about music playing too loud. The RATP Dev response was a statement of the policy about music. There was no indication that there was any communication with the rider. There was no indication that the video was pulled to confirm or deny what the rider reported. So So again, I don't see any follow-through.
Okay.
Number 4 looked good. Number 5, there's no indication that the rider was ever contacted or had a return call. Number 6, there was no indication that there was any further contact with the passenger to report back. Number 7, there was no report of any effort to contact the passenger. Number 8, it said we left a message for the customer, but there was no indication if they ever received a call back. Number 9, there was no indication that there was an effort to call the passenger. So I just, I know this is going to change in January, but I just want to see, I want to close those loops. When people call with complaints or concerns, that they be contacted, and I'd like to see that documented so that we know that it's happening.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else on any of the reports from already yet? Okay. Rider experience, I guess we'll just go around. We usually spend, I'm just gonna time check, so we have about 15 minutes left for the meeting. If you want to have kind of a very brief kind of summary in general of rider experience. For those folks that are new to transit, I will say, what we've been doing is if you have an expansive amount of rider experience, we ask you to use the same complaint system that everybody else uses. So if you're in the bus and you have a complaint, so saying on this date and time this happened, to go ahead and use the system. So that when we go around today, we say rider experience, it's kind of a global kind of statement of systemic things that you witness. But for the new members, when you have specific complaints, use the complaint system at the exact date and time that it happens, so that can get reported.
And those
Yeah.
specific complaints, and this was
Yeah.
very helpful to hear from staff and RAPPF,
Yeah.
the only way that they can respond to complaints in a timely fashion is if we report them in a timely fashion.
Right.
So waiting until today to report a concern that happened 3 weeks ago is not helpful.
Right, right. Okay. Tori, do you wanna start? I'm starting with you.
Actually, on a positive note, I've been riding the WE2 to get to and from work and to my house, and it's been really on time and great with that. So I just wanted to express that because that route has been awesome, and it's really enhanced my own experience getting to work. So thank you for that route enhancement.
Well, I haven't really heard any negative things about the route changes. I think that people have accepted it more quicker than thought they would. It's just like this, change, if you make the change, it's change. So they're adapting to it anyway. I only heard one complaint, and that was about the bus getting there 10 minutes, leaving at 20 after, and they couldn't make some kind of connection. Other than that, I think the changes, I think it's awesome. I like the idea of it going to Patton and then coming back and going to Tunnel Road.
I was saying.
Yeah, cause like if I'm going to Patton, I can get off, do what I gotta do if I don't have a lot to do, get right back on the bus and come all the way back across and go down Tunnel Road. I like that. And I think everything, I believe that everything that was done is good. And eventually, everybody will, once they get the concept changed, then they would gel into what's happening. It'll be all right.
W1, W2, all those routes have been on time. It's been kind of great, not knowing that I'm absolutely screwed when I get off work and run to the bus stop and might not make the S1 or S2 transfers. And I like to look at those new buses, the red ones. I really like to look at that. I don't know why. Something about the color scheme and that really works for me.
Different, yeah.
They're cool looking.
It's not staying though.
Yeah.
Those are just lease ones till we get the new ones, and it'll be in our normal
Can I say
colors.
something about that? I seen that bus and I said, now this is my honest opinion. It looked ghetto to me. It looked real hoodish. That red just did not grab me. I wasn't feeling it. I said, ooh.
I don't know, I like it for some reason.
You know?
Yeah,
I like it.
big red box or something.
Looking at your hat,
But
Jordan.
yeah, I'm telling you, I know, but
What's the color of your hat?
I like red. To be honestly, I like red, but that bus was not hitting me right. It really wasn't.
There's just two other things. Bus 1802, no, 1805. Used for S3 a lot. Their light comes on, but there's no sound. And then everyone,
Stop request.
yeah, for the stop request. And then for the for bus I think it's 604. No, 602. Excuse me. That's why I'm mixing them up. 602. That one you hear the noise, but there's no light at all.
The bus is going away.
Okay, cool.
He knows.
He says when certain leave.
Yeah, it is, yeah, it is. But thank you.
Everything's been going fine. I have a long-term problem with electric buses, but that's only on hills when the driver has to stop, and especially right out there. The bus is lit, well, right up here. Whenever it has to stop that stoplight, it's going back like that. I was wondering, can we put some signage on the back of the bus, like some of the tractor trailers have on, stand back, 10 feet or something like that. I didn't know whether it was possible or not, but it would avoid maybe future problems. And then I don't have any things to necessarily say that I went through. I noticed a lot of different drivers and getting to know them, and that's a good thing. All the drivers, they have been super. I mean, they're on their job handling drunks and everything, and that's they handle it very well, very good decorum. What I found today was the only thing that I have. Walmart, the bench at Walmart is about ready to fall apart. Sitting on it, it's like going up here, it's sitting on it, it's going up there. That has been like that for over 3 weeks that I know of. The other thing, I'm always thinking about my drivers. Barry, I wish you would very seriously get them some masks to put on, just because they can say it's cold purple, get on the bus free. That's it for me.
I have to say, that for me, anybody who wants to get on the bus for Code Purple, they should be able to choose what a safe place for them looks like. So if it's about, people not having to wait up to $1, that's where I'm kinda coming from. I want people to be able to get to somebody's couch or somebody's church. For me, that's what I'm like, if anybody needs to get on, that's what I feel. But I wanna share a really beautiful story. Cause I've been riding the bus for 11 years, and I've been watching this family with 3 little boys and their mom get on the bus on the W2. And I'm watching these kids grow up, and I thought the electric buses weren't gonna be running in West Asheville, but I see them a lot, and that's exciting. And we pull up to their school, and the eldest gets on the bus, and the joy on his face, and he said, "Mom, they got a new bus." And they the whole bus lifted. I think we all were just like, oh, what a relief. Because our young people are seeing this, and it was just like, I just wanted to bring that to you.
Thank you.
Well, bus ridership on the 1, 2, and 6 line has been stellar since January. That's just the best. I ride basically alone to work on the mornings at 7 a.m. I'm 1 or 2 people in the bus. But on the way back, it used to be.
Is that bus running early?
No.
Okay.
It's running.
So that's when we have trouble right now. It's real early, they're running a little early, it's like, stop, slow down.
But, and they do, they're stopping at the B&B pharmacy and then occasionally at the bottom of the
Kill
hill.
them a little time, they need to do that.
But, so that's been amazing, and the afternoons there's less of a pedestrian crush where everybody's been waiting on a bus that's 20 minutes late, so it's just awesome.
Good.
The new bus stop at the at the church on Haywood, I noticed a lot of needles there. That's probably a future discussion. And finally.
Let us know those though.
Okay.
I mean, we go by, but we'll go out and make a special visit if we need to, so please report them.
And one last She was parked on the corner of Wells and Fairfax, right where the W2 makes a turn. The W2 could not make the turn because the car was there. And I happened around the corner and there's an APD officer and he went over there and called them, contacted, got her to move the car. But the bus driver had to back up into the church parking lot and then reroute and go back around the Bard River. So I don't know if that's something to put on our list of things to do to get a no parking sign right there. Wells and Fairfax. Anyway.
On the first one.
No, I was just saying, that one thing I was worried about on the first couple days is the head signs issues on the WE1 and WE2, like not getting flipped over at the end of the route, but it looks like that's improving. Just watching them on that, it seems like they're getting better. I would just, since the crosstowns are really just ask that you guys stay on top of that, because it is confusing if you're
Absolutely.
going west, it says you're going due west or vice versa. That's it.
I have nothing to complain about this.
Okay. That's good.
Yeah, I sent in my rider experience early, and between staff and RATB Dev, they're going to be addressing them all. I think there's some things that I really do need to lift up, though. The bathrooms at the transit center are so much cleaner, so much better. I think they're being cleaned more often and more thoroughly than ever before. I think you've got a new staff person who takes this job seriously, and I want to nominate her for something. But if it's a woman, I think it is. Peggy, all right, yes. I've also been very impressed with the two new people at customer service, Jason and Rochelle. I'm looking forward to hearing more from them. The power washing on the transit platform, I think, is now happening. And to me, it makes a very noticeable difference on Sunday mornings. And the Ashland Avenue shelter, where I was counting in excess of 300 cigarette butts there. This past Sunday, I only counted 119. I think there's room for improvement, but you're clearly addressing the issues. Let's keep the trend moving in the right direction.
Good, thank you.
I've had good experiences all around, except for I have a question. Are drivers supposed to slow down so they can catch all the red lights? I mean, they're doing. I was with on a bus, and the driver, every single solitary red light, slow down so he can catch it. Every single light.
Depends on if they're running early on that schedule, then they're going to try and slow it so they don't have to sit in running traffic and hold traffic. So
He was actually running late. He was running 20 minutes late.
it was a long, no, that's not the norm. The norm would be approaching intersections are where people die in transit.
Yes.
So you want to approach intersections carefully. And you want to be cautious, and you don't want to be barreling into intersections. And
I understand.
That's the idea. No, the idea is not to catch every red light.
Okay.
So what were the positive ones?
Well, there's the positive ones where I really like the new system. It's actually very
It
nice.
seems to be
And I have told a couple of people, you know, that they say anything about it. I'm like, it's basically the same system we had, except they're going all the way across, and there's two of them. They're going opposite directions, and they're like, oh, I never noticed that. They all think it's the same bus that's taking that same loop. I'm like, no, there's two buses. One going eastbound, one going westbound.
There's definitely a bunch of positives in this change.
Much.
Well, we have a couple more minutes left for public comments. I want to get to anybody else from the public in our last public comment session that wants to comment.
I would like to, say that one of the things we really need is a shelter at the Walmart on Airport Road. I mean, you're standing up there by the road and you're on top of a hill, so you have a huge amount of wind. And you can have to stand up there for an hour if you happen to hit the timing wrong. And having to stand out in the wind and the rain for an hour is really a bummer.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jen.
Thank you. Does anyone else have a public comment that they'd like to make at this time?
I want to say, I want to ask you about the, I didn't notice it, but some somebody got on the bus, I was coming over here today, and they said, what happened to the covering on Ashland Avenue? Of course, I have tried to make up with something, and I said, well, maybe they can't see some kind of activities going on or something, and they can't see, cause the covering, it kinda hides. Cause somebody can actually at night get in there and sleep, or they can get in there and have a little party or whatever they wanna do. But, I'm curious about the covering that was on there.
The shelters that were there,
Sir,
the shelters that were there.
you know the bench where you sit on, is it Cox, Ashland? Where you sit on Ashland, the coverings that, the bench is there, but the coverings, the shield around it's not there. It's gone.
Is it on the platform?
No, it's on Ashland
On
Avenue.
Ashland.
She means
You
the
know-
shelters on it.
Did the shelters go? Did they get those out today? They were there this morning.
Yeah, they started to.
They were gonna get them out today. Yeah. They've become a habitat. That's the problem.
Say more about that.
They've become a habitat.
What do you mean by that?
People living.
Yeah, that's what I thought, and drinking, sitting there drinking and stuff.
It's, the drug trade was going on halfway down the block. As soon as the shelters went in, it came to there. And so even our customers can't sit in seats. They're not able to get to them because the drug dealers and the drunks and everybody else are using the shelters for that.
That's what I thought.
So with our moves with the platform, the shelters are going away. We're gonna go back to what we had before. People can catch those buses. They can come from the platform to get to those buses. Because they're gonna flip around and do the south side here, not too far, like you said, April. So we're looking at, all they've got left pretty much is to paint and clean the overhead areas. So that whole north side is gonna be, you know, half the platform's gonna be closed. And they'll be cleaning all that and painting all those beams and putting in bird deterrents. And then switching over to the south side. So that's what's happening with it.
And they're gonna redo all of the storm water stuff?
Yeah, the gutters, all that, yes.
Yes.
Yeah, they've actually, we're gonna replace several downspouts. They're, I don't know, they may have.
Some
cleaned up.
downspouts are missing.
Yeah, they've got those, they just haven't put them up yet. They're waiting to get down to do that work on that side.
Then they're gonna put the covering on.
And then
that.
they're putting the covers on because the whole, post office side has all the trees and that's what was causing issues with leaves. So they've actually worked with them to get covers on them. All that'll be taken care of. Yeah.
Didn't I hear something about they're gonna put solar panels?
Solar panels are coming, yeah.
Right.
Yep. That's not too far down the road here.
It's not gonna be now then.
It's coming pretty quick. Yeah. I would say within, I don't know for
Will
sure.
the solar panels will they do all the electricity for the station?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're supposed to fully power the station, and I think that we're selling energy back to Duke.
Yeah, it's the overflow will go back.
We're over time, so I wanna make sure I get you out here, and this is Kim's training.
Oh, I love Kim's dress.
I was like, so I thought this was Kim's last meeting, but this is a pillow that we would like to present to you, so you can dream about I can't believe I found this. It kind of looks like Asheville, but it's not. But look, there's like a river runs through it kind of deal. So this is so you can like